Hi, everybody. Welcome to Therapeutic Wisdom from the AKASH. Let me know if you can see me and hear me. Please say hello if you're hopping on. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm going to take a moment to share this out, and I would be very thankful if you did the same. For anybody that you feel is in need of hearing about anorexia, eating disorders, restriction, um, I would greatly appreciate it. This illness has the highest mortality rate of any mental illness, so it's really important to um, raise awareness and education about this illness. So I would really encourage you to, again, share this to people that you know can benefit, even if it's just somebody within their family. Okay. If you guys have not been to Awoken TV before, you can find Awoken TV, www.awoken.tv. Okay. And you can also find it on the App Store, which is very exciting because it just offers us more accessibility, right? So, I when you go to Awoken TV, you're going to be able to find a lot of conscious filmmakers, light workers. It's really like a spiritual and metaphysical Netflix. You can also find courses and other shows and films. So I really encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. And you can join me in my private Facebook group, Room for Healing, if you'd like additional TLC and tools for healing. Okay, so let me know if you guys can see me and hear me. If you are posting on the Akashic Academy or Emerge Healing and Wellness Facebook pages, I will not see these comments live. I will only see them on the replay. So if you want me to respond to you live and answer your questions that are coming up, please make sure to jump over to the Awoken TV Facebook page and follow me from there because that's where I'm going to see comments popping up. Okay. And that way I can interact with you guys because I really like interacting with the audience and connecting with all of you while I'm here, especially as things come up. I want you guys to ask questions. Hi, RG. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate the comment so that I know that this is working. Okay, I just have a couple more groups to share to, and then we're going to get started here. How's everybody doing with this full moon energy? There is, wow, a lot going on with this full moon energy, my friends. Full moon in Aries conjunct with Chiron in Aries, which brings up all of our past stuff, but in a way that aligns for our healing, not in a way that is meant to torture us. Okay. So, um, sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. I should know better. Uh, anyway, all right, this is the last one I'm going to share too, and then I'll share to the rest of them later. Okay, so we've had a lot of like technological issues and a lot of stormy weather and a lot of emotions in my home with this full moon. But you know what's so cool is that it carries so much momentum for us. It's really the message of this full moon, especially conjunct with the Chiron and Aries, which is the wounded healer. It's an asteroid. And what that does is it really brings up our past wounds because they're areas that we're ready to clear and release so that we can move forward and embody ourselves in a more joyful and exuberant way. Okay. So, really just be patient and gentle with yourself and allow this energy to move through, knowing that it's coming for your release, that we're still in this full moon energy for a couple more days. So, you guys can write down all the things that you want to release, burn them, scatter the ashes to Mother Earth, allow the universe to do what it will with that energy. Hi, Kirath. Thanks for being here. Hi, Carla. So, anorexia. How many of you have known someone with this mental illness? How many of you have experienced symptoms of it in the past? I'm going to tell you about what those are. So, anorexia is the number one leader in the mental health community for mortality rates, which is a lot of people don't know. So, and it's dramatically higher than the number two mental illness that people pass from, which is schizophrenia. So, the reason is twofold. One is that people die from anorexia because they just feel so trapped within themselves and their bodies, and they feel so tortured by these symptoms, and so they take their own lives. And the other reason is just because of medical complications that arise from anorexia. I used to work on an inpatient eating disorders unit, and It's amazing how deeply this illness runs and how it really borders on psychosis, and actually crosses over with psychosis a lot of the time. So, have been an eating disorder specialist for almost 20 years now, and that's not my primary specialty anymore. I've obviously shifted into Akashic work, and I'm shifting away from traditional therapy, but it is still something that's very near and dear to my heart because I have worked with countless numbers of patients over the last 2 decades who have suffered from this illness, and, it truly feels like a trap for them, like they can't get out. So any questions you have about anorexia, I'm happy to answer just in general. But I also wanna qualify that, yes, I'm a therapist, but in this environment, I am showing up as a spiritual teacher and healer. So this is not medical advice that I recommend that you disregard your doctor's or psychiatrist or therapist opinion and feedback on. Okay, I definitely want you to consult with your own treatment teams. But this is information that I've not only compiled over the past 20 years, but also in the space of the Akashic Records and the additional level of wisdom that has been shared through that space, and the additional level of compassion and love and acceptance that exists in this space to be able to help us view mental illness or anything in our lives in general from a higher perspective from divine intelligence. Okay. So, all right. So, what is anorexia? So, there's a lot of, and one of the biggest complaints that I get from my clients is that their loved ones or the people in their lives really are fairly judgmental about their experience with this illness, and they don't know a lot about it. It's the reason that people are judgmental, the reason that people have make assumptions is because they really just don't know a lot about it. And people need to be educated about this for sure. And it's certainly, I mean, I had gone to grad school already and was a successful therapist. Yet, when I was first presented with working with a patient with eating disorders, it's truly an entirely new and separate education on its own. So I definitely encourage you to, even if you're a well-practiced healthcare professional, to do some serious research and learning in this area if you're working with patients that present. So anorexia is primarily dictated by restriction, right? Restriction of intake. And it can also, which a lot of people don't know, it can also present as binging and purging. So most people think of binging and purging is voluntarily making yourself vomit. Okay. You can also purge through taking excessive laxatives as well. But this can occur with anorexia as well. And when it shows up with anorexia, the difference between bulimia and anorexia is that anorexia, there's a significant loss of weight. Okay. And it doesn't have to be that people are emaciated to get diagnosed with anorexia. It just means that they've lost a decent amount of weight within a certain period of time. So more than the average Joe would lose just if they weren't putting effort into it or weren't thinking about it. And they're also at the same time very terrified of weight gain, just terrified, very focused on body image, of course, as well, have a very distorted body image. And so they can engage in restrictive behaviors where they're not taking in food or liquids. They can engage in compulsive exercise as well. Laxative use, like I said, Ipecac, which is a syrup that you can take to make yourself throw up, um, diet pills. So those kinds of behaviors that you can engage in. But the primary diagnostic factor and criteria for anorexia is that loss of weight. Okay. So, um, the compulsive exercise is something that very often accompanies anorexia, and it very often crosses over with OCD. Although a lot of my patients, if they only have obsessive compulsive symptoms regarding eating and body image and exercise and intake, then it is not diagnosed as OCD. It's considered to be coming along with as kind of like a co-contributor to the eating disorder. Okay, so I did a live on OCD, I think it was 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So you guys can check that out too if that's something that would serve you. And any of those techniques and tools are also going to be supportive for somebody with anorexia. Okay. So the number one thing that you can do to help someone with anorexia is to structure their eating, right? Get very, very structured with their eating. So not getting an app like MyFitnessPal, which all of my clients with anorexia have come in with. I would say 90% of them come in with like MyFitnessPal or something. Oh, I'm tracking my calories. Well, that's great. I love that you're tracking what you're eating because that's actually a very supportive exercise. But You wanna track it in we have apps actually, there's eating disorder apps for people who, struggle with anorexic or bulimic symptoms or binge eating symptoms, and creating that structure makes people feel safe, okay? And anorexia is all about lacking safety and stability, okay? So, you want to include a structure around their eating, but a structure that doesn't include counting calories. Okay. It's really write down how many times you're eating per day and when you're eating, how much are you eating. Get very specific, very, very, very specific. Like what size is the chicken breast that you're eating? What did you put on it? How much was that in terms of like size? Okay. But not focusing on calories. And the biggest rule is, oh, Carla, I'm so sorry. It seriously makes me want to cry when I hear that. I'm just going to send love and Reiki to you and your family. It's so near and dear to my heart because I've seen so many beautiful people um, experience this illness, and it's a family disease. This is not something that just impacts the individual. It's truly a collective impact and collective healing and recovery as well. So, one of the primary approaches for anorexia is the Maudsley method. And the Maudsley method is great, although I find that it's not realistic a lot of the time for a lot of people in this world because it includes the entire family in treatment. And with dual income families and the level of activities and running back and forth that people do these days with the pace that we keep, particularly in our society, it can be very hard for people to show up and actually make that commitment. But it's really critical too, because when everybody shows up and makes that commitment, you're signaling to the person how important. Oh my goodness gracious. Lynn, sending you so much love. Mm. So this is an anniversary time for you too, which is, I'm sure, bringing up a lot of emotions and feelings. Just taking a moment for you, sending some Reiki your way. So there's very commonly a history of neglect or a history of abuse, particularly sexual abuse with anorexia. And not all the time, though. Not all the time. There can be a narcissistic or personality disorder pattern in the family. It's also very closely linked to substance use. So if you have any substance use in your family, that is also a precursor for people who already have other risk factors for anorexia. So, so I was talking about structure, right, around eating and how important it is to immediately go to this and to have accountability for the person from people in their lives to be able to say, listen, I love you and I'd rather have you alive and be and have you pissed off at me. Right? I'd rather have you pissed off at me. So there's a lot of videos out there. There's actually a really, really good one for families on the Maudsley method to teach parents and families how to assist people who are struggling with this illness so that they can balance that compassion and understanding with accountability and very rigid and firm limits and boundaries around no, I will sit here with you for 2 hours if I need to, but you need to finish this meal. And I know this is challenging and I love you and I will stick with you through it and I will hold your hand, but this needs to happen. Um, so, so that is certainly a very helpful approach for sure. And the more people that can get involved in treatment, the better, because the greater the support network, the higher the resiliency for the patient. Okay. So, um, so creating structure around around eating is very helpful. The basic rules are don't you, and this is for anybody, guys, especially for preventive tools. You want to eat well, I'm sorry, within 1 hour of waking up. So within 1 hour of waking up, you want to eat. You also don't want to go between or more than 3 hours without eating. And for people who are really severely emaciated, that rule shifts to 2 hours. But you don't want to go more than 3 hours without eating during the day. So if it's a small snack, we've always heard this idea of eating multiple times throughout the day and that that's healthiest for us for our metabolism. Yes, it absolutely is. But it also supports our organs and the distribution of nutrients into our cells when we consistently feed it nutrient rich foods. Okay. So that's why nutritionists are often on board for people with anorexia as well to assist them with not only the structure, but being able to find nutrient rich foods to be able to serve this person in their physical body. Okay. Somebody who has anorexia, who is underweight, or has lost a significant amount of weight, it's literally impossible for them to be fully cognitively oriented, for them to be fully functioning, for them to be fully emotionally stable, even if they feel like they are. Even if you can sit across from them and it seems like they're completely rational. I promise you that they're not. So that's why the number one step is refeeding. The number one step is making sure that they get nutrients. And a lot of times, one of the best ways to do this is through fluids because they're very scared to eat and that actual concept is difficult for them. And sometimes they get very sick because they're used to not eating, and so their bodies have trouble digesting. So it can be easier to start with smoothies or Ensure or Boost to be able to encourage that level of nutrient getting into their body, as well as being gentle and easy on yourself. It's a very compassionate way to assist yourself with refeeding. So, how does this show up for us when we're looking at it from an energetic and spiritual perspective? It's entirely inner child work, right? Because we talked about safety and security, we talked about neglect and abuse, right? And these are all things that have threatened the person's feeling of safety. And so, what they need to know is, I'm well taken care of. I have a strong foundation. And they don't necessarily feel that in their physical bodies yet. So, they need that in their community and their family and their loved ones to start, which is why it's helpful for that, for to have people who support you in this recovery. But it's also really important for you to approach yourself as a parent, right? To approach yourself as somebody who is being really gentle and compassionate and forgiving and loving at the same time that you're setting limits and being firm. Okay. So it's being able to reparent yourself and really doing some inner child work. However, doing the deeper inner child work of excavating all that old stuff that you need to clear and heal is not going to be something that's productive and supportive if somebody's really in that refeeding stage and they really need to get to a place where they can cognitively and emotionally tolerate doing some of that work. So you can always start by just saying, like, all right, I'm going to just offer myself a lot of patience and compassion and understanding so that I can gently and gradually feed myself, right? So it's about feeding yourself as if you were an infant. That's why we go to liquids, right? Drinking through a straw. These are the kinds of things that can assist people who are struggling with these symptoms. Okay. So you're going back to that time when you're an infant. So, what are the kinds of things that you do for an infant? Right? You hold them, you love them, you make sure they're clean, you make sure they get sleep, you make sure they get exercise. Although with anorexia, you're not going to do exercise until they're back to um, not only a weight that is comfortable, for their physical body, but also where they're able to add in calories without having panic attacks or without feeling like they're decompensating when they're adding exercise in. You also want to make sure that they're not too obsessive about the exercise because you don't want to feed into that cognitive piece. But when we have an infant, that's what we focus on, right? Basic needs. Basic needs, basic love, compassion, holding, comfort, and support. Okay. So that's the other piece here is going straight to making your basic needs your top priority. And basic needs mean prioritize your sleep, prioritize your fluid intake, prioritize your eating, prioritize love, connection, snuggling, touching, compassion. Okay. So thinking about those needs as an infant and being that patient and understanding and compassionate with yourself. Okay. All right. So the other thing is that the number one cord that runs through every single person I've ever met with this diagnosis is anger. Extreme, intense, immense levels of anger. And they exist at a subconscious level. These people don't recognize they're angry a lot of the time. But if you tell them that they need to eat something, oh baby, you'll see the rage come out. Okay. And that's what some of these videos from the Mosley approach can help with too, is easing parents and loved ones through how do you support these rages that can come up when people don't want to eat, don't want to feed themselves. Okay. So, so anger and spite. So it's of course feeling like, you know what, I'm not helpless. I'm not going to rely on you. I'm going to take my power back and I'm going to take control. And this is one area where I can take control that nobody can control for me, which is my eating. So yes, it's about control, but what's underneath that control is anger and spite, getting back at someone, right? Or feeling really pissed off. And it could be pissed off at people in this current life. It could be being angry at people in previous lives or ancestors that they're again not consciously aware of. Okay, but they're carrying this anger forward from previous lifetimes or carrying it forward from previous generations. And it's not even something that they necessarily have to own and carry. So it's important for them to identify that as well once they're cognitively oriented enough to be able to do this work. So Kirath asks, yes, you absolutely can. In fact, that's what people need to do. They need to change the atmosphere and build a routine for their betterment, 100%. And I think a lot of times there are certain families that cannot do that, will not do that. And it's really unfortunate because it would really, oh, wow, Lynn. Yep. That's the level of rage I'm talking about. Thank you for sharing that example. I know that might be hard for you to go back to, but thank you for sharing that example because that's the level of deep rage that exists with anorexia. I've never seen people more enraged than people with this illness. Um, and so it's about allowing that anger release, right? Let yourself release it because eating disorders are about that spite, that revenge energy. I'm going to get back at a person, a situation, myself, whatever it happens to be, society, spirit. Okay. So it's about allowing and honoring and acknowledging that level of rage so that it can release, so that it can come up because it doesn't want to stay stuck inside. It's coming up because it wants to get out. Go ahead, rip the toilet off the bathroom floor. Get it out. Right? So you get it out, but you move forward from that, okay? You don't sit in the revenge energy because that's toxic and it's going to eat you alive, literally. And that's exactly what's happening with anorexia, right? It's eating people alive. And so this is the time when you need to release the anger and then visualize the vision of who you want to be. Okay. And this doesn't mean that you're going to visualize yourself all super skinny, right? When you have anorexia, because that's a lie that the illness tells you. It tells you that once you get skinny, you're going to be happy. And it never happens that way because then it just sets a new goal to continue to lose weight. So it's being able to trust yourself enough that you can be your own foundation and support and show up for yourself consistently by creating this structure around your eating and other supportive practices, including like meditation. I don't really know that somebody with full-blown anorexia can engage in. It completely depends on the person because usually the anxiety is super high and the anger is super high. So it can be really helpful to do something like tapping or very slow physical movements like Tai Chi or Qigong. A lot of times, interpretive dance or expressive dance can be woven into treatment for eating disorders, which I think is fantastic. Any kind of expressive arts because it allows you to move your body, but in a way that's gentle and isn't going to burn a lot of calories, but is going to support moving through some of the anxiety and the angst that needs to be released. Okay. So you visualize this vision of how you want to feel. Okay. Not who you want to become, not what your physical body looks like, but how do I want to feel in my life? Right. And once you do that, you then take one action step toward it that has nothing to do with eating, nothing to do with exercise, nothing to do with body image. So that could mean, oh, well, I want to experience freedom. Okay. Well, what makes you feel free? Is it going out into a field with the wind blowing through your hair? Oh, that's so beautiful. What a beautiful practice and way to honor her legacy, Lynn. That is so beautiful. I love that because it's such a supportive practice. Okay, so you visualize this and then you take an action step toward it. And this could be I'm going out, like I said before, I'm going out into a field, I'm feeling the breeze on my face, and that feels like freedom. Okay, what else feels like freedom? Is it getting in your car and driving around because you can go somewhere, because it gives you the chance to make a choice and to control where you go and what you do and who you see? Okay. So thinking about that, how to access that feeling of freedom is going to shift that revenge and anger energy into something that is more supportive and positive. All right. So a lot of times people with anorexia feel very trapped, right? And very helpless as well. And this is where the control piece comes in. So surrender is a big one, right? When we're talking about spirituality. For sure. But we don't want to ask people with anorexia to surrender unless they feel comfortable and safe. And so getting to know your body is one of the best ways to do this. Getting really a really intimate relationship with your body. So yoga, qigong, tai chi, these are all really wonderful ways to get to know your body. There's also some really supportive energetic practices that I take my clients through in the Akashic records that can assist with identifying issues that exist in your physical body and being able to identify them as energy, being able to receive messages from them to allow your body to communicate to you, because people with anorexia, their bodies are communicating to them. Everybody's bodies are communicating to them. My body's communicating to me on a daily basis as to what our needs are and what it is that we need to forward or work through to be able to be at our best, right? So, what happens here, especially if people have a history of neglect or abuse, or control issues, let's say, is you end up identifying with your abuser or your neglector. Okay, so I don't know if any of you have had a history of that or have seen people or understand people who have a history of that, but this is a very codependent pattern that can be created. And this happens because you get so dependent on the abusive cycle. You get so used to the, oh, everything's so wonderful and lovely. And then here's the abuse or the neglect. And then everything's so wonderful and lovely. So it's that cycle of abuse that people stay in because they know that the good part's coming. They know that the part's coming when this loved one of theirs that they're so eager to be close to says to them, oh, I love you so much. And they kind of love bomb you, right? And you're so wonderful. And let's do this together. And let's do that together. And let's plan our future and all of that. And that feels wonderful. And so people stay because it feels so wonderful and they want to get that feeling. And so they end up being actually more attached and codependent on their abuser or the person who's neglected them than an average relationship. So what happens is, after this relationship is over, or even when they've done a lot of work on themselves, it can end up that the person who has the symptoms takes on this role of abuser or of neglect toward themselves. So they'll be very critical towards themselves. And this is what happens in anorexia. You neglect yourself, right? Because you've been neglected. So of course, underneath that is, I don't feel worthy. I'm not good enough to get my basic needs met. I don't deserve to eat. And people feel powerful. They feel really powerful. Like, yes, I'm going to show everybody I got this. I can be the best anorexic out there, right? It becomes their identity. So helping them to see the other aspects of themselves, including the spiritual piece that exist and the energetic piece that exists, that we're all made of atoms and molecules that are always shifting and vibrating. And so we can shift them and change them at any time into what we want. And we have that power within us. So shifting the focus of the power. Yes, you are enormously powerful. Absolutely. I validate that for you. You're enormously powerful. Let's find other ways that we can be powerful and you can feel that power, because that's what they want. They want that feeling of power. Great. Let's cultivate it. I support you in that. Right. And what these people can shy away from in that situation is, oh, wait, I'm afraid of the power, right? I'm afraid of the power. I don't know what to do with my own power. I don't feel confident in that because ultimately they don't feel worthy, right? So it's helping them ease into that because they're afraid of getting rejected. They're afraid of the responsibility. They're ultimately afraid of failure. They even are afraid of failing at having anorexia because it becomes that important to them. And one of the most common themes that I've seen in my patients with anorexia is if they've had a history of sexual abuse, particularly, or difficult relationships with somebody who they feel has really crossed their intimate boundaries in some way, even if it's emotional or cognitive, is that the anorexia really serves to allow them to shrink. It allows them to shrink physically because number one, they want to go back to childhood to be taken care of in a way that feels really nurturing and supportive to them, and to kind of do it again, right? And say, listen, I might not have gotten everything that I needed at the time, so I'm going to replicate that. I'm going to bring that back by losing all of this weight. And again, it's not a conscious process. Okay. It's not volitional. The other piece is they're shrinking because they don't want the attention. They don't want people to pay attention to them. Because if they've had a sexual abuse history, they think, I don't want you to pay attention to me because if you do, you might take advantage of me, or you might want to have sex with me, or you might want to touch me in a way that feels really inappropriate or feels really uncomfortable. So I'm going to protect myself from that by shrinking so that I'm not seen. Okay. Let me know if you guys have any questions that are coming up around this. I just have a couple more things to share. But they don't want to be desirable. They want to be powerful, but they don't want to be desirable. So that's fine, but that doesn't mean you can't desire yourself. If you don't want other people to desire you, fine, but it doesn't mean you can't desire yourself. And it's getting to that combination, that balance of being able to feed yourself and feel your power at the same time in a way that has nothing to do with food, that has to do with your spirit, that has to do with your heart, that has to do with your intentions and your vision for this life and this world. Okay, that's one of the biggest things you can do for somebody who's really struggling is offer them hope. Ask them about what their goals and dreams are. Excuse me, where they want to be in 10 years, where they want to be in 15 years. Because if they have a vision, even if it's the teeniest one, great. Huge, huge strength factor, restorative, supportive, resiliency factor for them. Okay. All right. So it's important to listen to the body's messages. Like I said, I'm just going to review here what we've talked about today. Create a structure with eating, especially even if you need to introduce fluids. Inner child work, once they're at a cognitive level. Yes, thank you, Lynn. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing about epigenetics. I completely agree. That's what's so beautiful about energy work, is that we have the ability to shift the expression of our DNA. We don't shift our DNA itself and the structure of our DNA itself, but we shift its expression. We can shift our gene expression through energy work. So any kind of ancestral work that's been done is going to clear the genetic codes that have been passed down to the person who's carrying this forward from somebody else. I'm very, very passionate about ancestral healing and past life healing, and do it in the records with my clients all the time, with myself. It's the deepest level of healing you can do for sure. But you don't want to start there when somebody has symptoms of anorexia. You want to ease into that a little bit, right? Because you also, as the loved one, want to approach this person with enormous amounts of gentleness and compassion, as well as very, very clear, firm limits. Okay. We talked about that anger and revenge energy, releasing it, being able to see your vision and taking one action step toward that to give your body the message, I'm moving forward. It's truly, people have a relationship with their eating disorder, whether we're talking about anorexia or any eating disorder, they have a relationship with it, and they become best friends with it. And so losing it makes them feel like they're losing the most important relationship in their life. So engaging spirituality is critical. Critical. This relationship that they have access to 24/7 all the time, that offers them power, that offers them energy, that offers them cleansing, that offers them healing. So being able to comfort them and validate them and support them by shifting them into a relationship that is more supportive of their soul's path, right? There's a reason that anorexia comes into people's lives. There's a reason that it comes in, and it might not be for the person who gets it. It could be for the family members. It could be for the loved ones around them who needed a greater level of awareness or understanding of this person's purpose in the world, of what they were here to share, of what they were here to advocate for. It's funny because people with anorexia, a lot of the time, they have a big voice. You'd think, oh, they're shrinking down and so they don't have a voice. Oh, they have a big voice. They advocate for themselves. They really do. But they advocate for themselves in what they think they need and want to be able to achieve this lower weight, to be the best at their illness when it starts. Awesome. You have a voice. You have anger. I love anger. Great. Because it packs a punch. It brings energy. It brings motivation. It brings mobilization forward. Allow the anger. Don't squash it too much. You don't want to allow disrespect. You don't want to allow violence, things like that. But I love the anger because that means people are lifting up from depression, from anxiety, from guilt, from shame. Deep levels of shame run through anorexia. Okay. So let me know if you guys have any other questions coming up. I'm just going to check my notes here and make sure there isn't anything I missed that the records wanted to share. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what they brought through yesterday when I was tuning into them about this live. So let me know if you guys have questions in the comments, even if you're on the replay. Definitely tag me in the comments so that I can be sure to come back and answer your questions. I'm happy to support you. Also, um, currently I have my certification program running and I am not going to be enrolling people anymore after today. So I know that I mentioned last week that it was the last weekend to sign up, but then I also remembered that that was for the Monday class. We have a Thursday class too that we just held yesterday, but there's so many people that are involved in this and that are interested in this. And we do the past life healing, we do the inner child work, we do the forgiveness work, the deep levels of forgiveness work, because people with anorexia, you got to let go of all of the anger and spite. Anger and spite because it's toxic and it's literally eating people alive. So, yes, I totally agree, Lynn. Smartest, strongest people. They really are. And they have beautiful souls and so much to share with the world. So much to share. You're welcome, Kira. Thank you so much for being here and interacting. I really appreciate it. Carla says, what you are saying answers so many questions we have. We live 9 hours away from where our niece lived. It all fits. Yeah. I'm very glad that it answers some questions for you. And I thank you for being here, that you were meant to be here today for sure. RG says, I have two boys who are both very critically ill with long-term diseases. I haven't lost either of them, but it is an everyday fear, and I totally send you both so much love. Yes. Yeah, and I actually have a course coming up soon because I have a chronic illness and um, I've been, recovering from it for the past 4 years and primarily through energy work. And I'm starting a course called Thrive with another practitioner who's a psychic medium, and she is also struggling with chronic illness. And this is going to, wow, just it's so beautiful that this came through for both of us. And so we just decided to do it together because both of us together are such a powerhouse with helping people heal from chronic illness in a very natural way and in a way that the chronic illness can speak to you and help you understand the lessons and the messages that are meant to be learned when illness shows up in our lives. I mean, I still say now that I'm so grateful that I got sepsis, and which I never thought I would say, but I am really grateful because the level of changes and shift and awakening in my life that has occurred is something that I never would have responded to if I hadn't gotten that dangerously ill, So Lynn says my daughter was overweight and met a friend in high school who taught her restriction, which turned into substance abuse. Yes, and they can happen together for sure. And unfortunately, a lot of times in with this illness, collaborating together, they can really rile each other up and make things worse. So anyway, so if you guys want to get on a certification program, let me know because today's the last day I'm going to enroll for this live class now. Next year, I am going to be running it on a rolling basis, but it's not going to include individual sessions and it's going to be digital programming. And then we're just going to have like group laser coaching sessions. So, and the price is going to go up significantly next year too. So, let me know if you guys want to get in because we're going to be doing all of this, the past life healing, the ancestral healing, forgiveness, inner child work. And we've just done some foundational skills so far in the program for the first couple weeks. So you guys can access those replays. So let me know if you're interested. I will be here live again next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, and I will post about the topic and what I'm going to bring through when the Akashic records tell me, which is usually the day before or a couple days before. They make it very clear what the world needs to hear. So I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. Definitely check out www.awoken.tv. If you're a healthcare practitioner, please join me in my Facebook group, Integrating Healthcare and Energy Healing. I will put the link here. And if you're somebody who would like additional tools and tips on healing, please join me in Room for Healing, which is another free private Facebook group that I have here. Okay, I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here, sending love and healing to all of you, and I'll see you next week.